please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Well, the Hava Havai of Indian cinema, somebody who enchanted audiences with her impeccable performances, no more. Sridevi's sudden demise has left the film fraternity and her countless fans in deep shock. Touted as India's first female superstar, she has left behind an unmatched legacy with her iconic films like Sadma Khuda Gawah, Mr. India, English Winglish and many more. India has lost its evergreen Chandani. Of course, now there are twists with respect to her death and the current probe that is underway. Good evening. Thanks for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The top story this evening. Nearly a year after ACC and Ambuja Cements set up a committee of directors to explore a merger, ACC has informed exchanges just a short while ago that it will not pursue the merger with Ambuja Cements. ACC has said there are constraints in implementing the merger, but a merger remains the ultimate objective. That's pretty much what the statement says. To discuss this development, we've got with us the chairman of Icon Investment Advisors, Anil Singhvi, also the former managing director and CEO of Ambuja Cements. Mr. Singhvi, always a pleasure to have you join us on the show. You know, they haven't explained why they have decided to call off the merger at this juncture, though they say that that is the ultimate goal. Do you believe that it is because of things like regulatory costs, mine ownership, transfer issues that perhaps has cost this merger at this point in time?
I don't think, Shireen, because that cannot be the issue. I don't think there is a competition commission issue here or even transfer of mines. As you know, the Transfer of Mining Act was amended last time for transfer of mines. And the fact that you narrated that it's been about 12 months since this directors committee was appointed to look into ways and doing it. But I've been saying from 2013, I will just trace it back for a few seconds, the history behind it. When ACC became the subsidiary company of Ambuja, that was a time when almost $600 million were sent out by Lafarge out of India. And just they needed that money which was sitting out as a cash on the balance sheet of Ambuja Cement. So I think there is a bit of a design. So I wouldn't give it by just the business compulsion. And you don't take 10 months in merging the two cement companies which are under your own ownership. Look at how Ultratech was created by Kumar Mangalam Birla by merging the Indian Rayon and Grasim Cement companies. So I don't think there is any merit in this whole game which is being played out. I think according to me, there is a bigger design to frustrate the minority shareholders.
What is the bigger design, sir?
To frustrate the Ambuja shareholders. In fact, just look at Siren for last 10 years. Sorry, it's a very painful thing for me personally on that. Last 10 years, Ambuja has really not created any wealth for the minority shareholders. Whereas every other cement company has done so well in terms of share prices, Ambuja has languished at the same price, more or less. You can trace the prices for Ambuja. Just show a graph of last 5 years of cement share prices of Ambuja Cement. It is just in the region of 230 to 270 rupees. And I've been saying it at top of my voice for last several years that I think both the boards have failed in really coming out to a much better plan for the minority shareholders. Why can't you merge ACC into Ambuja? This was a thing which we asked them. If you remember in 2013, when they did this, that making ACC as a subsidiary company, they came out saying that 900 crores will be every year the savings. Mind you, 900 crores. Where is that number today? Even their profit after tax are not even into the vicinity of that number.
So you're saying that you're saying that you believe that this is an effort to frustrate the minority shareholders. You also seem to suggest that the synergy benefits that were spoken of may not necessarily have been as good as they were projected.
Look at this, Shireen, that they talked about 900 crores saving in 2013, and today's statement talks about that both the companies will work together for sale and purchase, and that is why they will go to the minority shareholders for a related party transaction. If that be the case now, then what were they doing between 2013 and 2018? when this was a proposal which was brought to the Ambuja shareholders that ACC will become the subsidiary company, and because of becoming the subsidiary company, there will be a 900 crore saving for both the companies. Then what are they doing today, and what did they do in 2013?
So before I let you go, Mr. Singhvi, what are the key questions that you would like to ask the management, and what do you believe will be the key trigger that the market will watch out for tomorrow?
Shireen, very clearly, what is the reason? They have not given any reason that why they thought then in May 2017, and after 12 months, and mind you, for these kind of mergers which are coming under Lafarge and Holcim set only, why should they take almost about 12 months to come out and say that, oh, we can't do it? And what are the reasons for not doing it? So you can't keep shareholders tentative for such a long period of time. The minority shareholders have no clue to why this was proposed and why it is not being done today. What are the reasons for not having done and gone through this?
Yes, that question remains unanswered. As I pointed out, the press release does not give any indication. It merely says that they are not going to pursue the merger at this juncture, with the merger being the eventual objective. Mr. Singhvi, always a pleasure, sir. Appreciate you joining us here with your first reaction here on this developing story. To another story that we've been tracking very closely. It's been nearly 2 weeks since the 11,400 crore rupee PNB fraud came to light. The investigative agencies, the CBI, the Enforcement Directorate have swung into action and attached many properties of Mehul Choksi and Nirav Modi. Just a short while back, the Enforcement Directorate has summoned PNB's chief Sunil Mehta. Utkarsh Chaturvedi standing by now with the latest. Utkarsh, take us through the various developments of the day when it comes to the action of investigative agencies.
So, Shireen, the Enforcement Directorate finally moving ahead in this case. Two important developments today in the case. First, and the big one, Enforcement Directorate today questioned the Executive Director of Finance of Punjab National Bank and has summoned the MD and CEO Sunil Mehta to be present for questioning. Both of them were grilled by CBI in this case over the weekend. Secondly, ED moved court today to seek a permission to issue letter rogatory to 6 countries. What that does is it gives ED the permission to seek information from other countries regarding the case. ED already has seized movable and immovable assets of Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi of worth more than 6,000 crore rupees. CBI, on the other hand, has been one of the most active agencies in this case. 12 arrests so far have been made by CBI, 6 PNB officials, 6 officials from the company of Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi. This includes both the PNB officials who were a part of the initial FIR and the finance heads of both 5 Star Diamonds and Gitanjali Group. CBI has the custody of all the 12 accused till 3rd of March, and they will try to get as much info from them as they can about the modus operandi and the involvement of other people in this case. Finally, the income tax. Interestingly, it has been the first agency to move against Nirav Modi. But at this point of time, 29 properties and 105 bank accounts of Nirav Modi and 144 bank accounts of Gitanjali Group have been attached by the income tax. Now, on the road ahead, 2 major challenges here, Shireen. One, to recover the amount of the fraud and liquidate it. And most importantly, getting Mehul Choksi and Nirav Modi back to the country. We have seen that in the case of Vijay Mallya, how cumbersome and tedious a task it is. So most probably the new law against the fugitives, which we have been speaking about, might be of some help here.
Well, it's not going to apply retrospectively, so I don't know what it will do for this particular case. But thanks very much for joining us, Utkarsh, with the details on the day's developments. While probing into the PNB scam, one of the biggest concerns within the banking industry is who will actually pay for the fraud. We put this question to SBI Chairman Rajneesh Kumar. He expects Punjab National Bank to pay for the exposure that his bank, that State Bank of India, has in the Nirav Modi case. Remember, SBI is not alone. There's a clutch of other Indian banks that say that PNB will have to bear the liability since PNB issued the letter of undertaking. Here's SBI Chief Rajneesh Kumar in an exclusive chat with CNBC-TV18.
As far as our exposure is concerned on Punjab National Bank, so that number is very much confirmed, calculated and advised to the Punjab National Bank. And our exposure on one of the companies, Gitanjali Gems, that also has been crystallized and there was no issue around that. So our numbers, our claim is clear, but because there are some secondary market purchases, so double counting has to be avoided. And that is where I think only PNB can give you a confirmed number.
No, I agree, sir. In PNB, what we have got is that 11,400 odd crores of one kind of exposure and another 1,700 crore exposure to Gitanjali. So we are working with something like 13,000 crore. My question is that are there other diamond companies, or, you know, either because of a follow-on effect or because all banks have gone and done a thorough search? Should we expect that there will be other, you know, either wrong cases of lending or, you know, manufactured LOUs without a credit memo? Any such problems are they likely to emerge? After all, the IBA met over this issue.
So I don't think so. It seems to be a case confined to the particular branch of Punjab National Bank. At least for State Bank of India, I can confirm that there is no such issue, no such problem. And I'm sure by now all other banks have also would have reviewed their portfolio and would have arrived at the similar conclusion, because if something was wrong somewhere, by now I presume it would have come out.
Okay. So the other thing that has come from the Reserve Bank, I believe, are circulars telling banks that they have to connect their SWIFT communication system to the core banking system in cases where they are not. I know you all are not involved. Any other instruction from the regulator on this?
No, other than whatever they have said about the safety of the SWIFT and the controls which need to be in place. So nothing else we have heard as of now.
And deadline of April is possible to do this. It's not very difficult for the entire banking system to comply.
Very much.
Okay.
Very much, very much, very much. Very
Has the regulator or the government or PNB itself decided who will pay that 11,400? Bankers, when we last heard, there was still some argument between PNB on one side and other bankers.
So I am very confident that things will get sorted out between PNB and the other banks.
Okay. You are expecting them to pay you?
That is my expectation, of course.
Okay. No, but clearly the government or RBI have not come out with anything? They have not intervened?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Well, the government is gearing up to introduce a new law. It's called the Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill. This is in a bid to check absconding corporate defaulters. The Law Ministry had already approved the draft bill in September of last year, but now Money Control learns that in the wake of the 11,400 crore rupees scam at Punjab National Bank involving Nirav Modi, the government does not want to waste more time and is likely to introduce it in the second leg of the budget session itself when Parliament resumes. Joining us now to discuss the provisions of this proposed bill, corporate lawyer H.P. Ranina and Abizar Divan, partner and leader financial services at EY India. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the show. Mr. Ranina, let me start by asking you. Now, the purpose of the Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill, according to the government, is to deter economic offenders from fleeing the country and confiscate their assets even without a conviction. How significant is this, Mr. Ranina?
I think it's a very significant development, because to confiscate assets without a conviction goes against the basic principle of law. But now the Parliament wants to pass such a law and overrule the general legal provision where a man is considered to be innocent until he is proved to be guilty, will require this particular legislation. So I think it's a very substantial piece of legislation, perhaps only one in the world, where this type of provision is sought to be made. But then I suppose India has its own you know, special people who need to be dealt with accordingly.
Well, India has its own special people, as you point out. But Abizar, you know, what are the checks and balances that you will need to put in place if the bill suggests that you can actually confiscate assets even without a conviction? And for the benefit of our viewers, let me just take you through what this proposed bill says in terms of the targets that it intends to go after. Willful defaulters with loans of over 100 crore rupees, a person who has an arrest warrant warrant issued for a scheduled offence, a person who leaves or has left India. So these are the people that the government hopes to target by way of the Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill. Abizar.
Yeah, so I mean, my view is that, as Mr. Ranina just said, this goes against the very grain of what we want to do in terms of actually catching people who are convicted rather than people who against whom only warrants are issued. So I think that frankly we need to have some very strong evidence to prove that they have actually circumvented the system. The reason is otherwise the nation as a whole stands to lose a lot of credibility. Because this is actually an exposure to people who are not going to be in India. So the law is actually extraterritorial in that sense. And will expose our own credence. So I think there's a self-balancing check in here that we should not be able to issue it against anybody who's a willful defaulter and who's run away from the country. So ideally, my view is that we will have to have the right kind of checks to be able to make sure that we can prove their guiltiness.
Yes. Mr. Ranina, just to take Abizar's point forward now, how will this bill work? It says cases will be tried under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. The administrator will sell the fugitives' properties to pay off lenders, and provisions of this bill will override provisions of other laws, which is basically the IBC, the SARFACI, and so on and so forth. Will this stand legal scrutiny, even though we're given to understand that the Law Ministry has signed off on this in September last year? But do you believe that this will stand legal scrutiny in its current avatar?
Well, certainly the people are going to challenge the constitutional validity of this particular provision, and the matter will obviously be decided by the Supreme Court. But if the government can make out a case and say that there are sufficient safeguards, for example, only if a person is held to be a willful defaulter by a competent court, then these provisions will apply.
Okay.
In that case, the Supreme Court may uphold the constitutional validity of this provision. Yeah, because everybody is worried now. You see, it's not that the judges are immune from what's happening. They also read newspapers, watch television shows, and they realize that things are going out of hand in this country, and a lot of people are just walking out of this country at their own free will. So if you have a willful defaulter, so long as you remain in India and you agree to face the consequences, this provision will not apply. But if you run away from the country, then certainly this provision should be made applicable.
Okay, Abizar, you were talking about safeguards. We just heard from Mr. Ranina in terms of some safeguards. And again, I point out that this is something that has been, in fact, in the pipelines since September. The government wanted to take it up in the winter session of Parliament. It didn't do that. It didn't come up in the budget session so far either. So perhaps given the political climate, they will want to see as pushing this bill through. But what, in order of priority, Abizar, are the things that you would watch out for?
See, one is that, yes, we have to create enough proof. But the fact is that if we had enough proof today, we could even prove it in those countries' respective courts for an extradition.
Right.
So clearly, I mean, there was an ability. I think the problem basically is that we don't have the controls to be able to get the right kind of proof. So clearly, we'll have to work towards making sure that we ourselves are not negligent in many ways, our own banks. For example, if we are found to be negligent, then we will not be able to create enough proof. So, for example, take the recent case. For example, if we are not going to be routing everything through a CBS system, and directly there is a connivance with a particular employee of a particular bank, then our ability to extradite anybody else, or even to see, we anyway have a right to sell their assets in the country.
Right.
But the issue is how do we extradite them and get them to get the money back that they have taken.
Right.
So I think that requires very strong proof to be able to prove in courts outside of India that can be done.
Outside of India, absolutely.
Now, the other one more thing, is the willful defaulter thing, Shireen.
Yes.
Because the willful defaulter definition is very simple in today's times. So I agree with Mr. Ranina that it has to be endorsed by a court.
Okay.
So today, when banks have to do it, it's simply their boards have to pass a resolution and the person is declared as a willful defaulter.
Right.
That's not going to be good enough.
That's not going to be good enough. It must have the go-ahead of a court, is what both our guests suggest. But Mr. Ranina, let me end by asking you, because what we are also given to understand is that the Law Ministry wants a saving clause, that there should be certain exceptions in the statute which enables the repeal law to be in force. You know, is that part of the checks and balances you think that the government is trying to work in?
Well, the saving clause is there in every statute, and the saving clause will be there, which would, you know, make certain exceptions, and so long as those exceptions are fulfilled, then the new law will not apply. That's the main object of the saving clause.
Okay.
But just one last point, Shireen, which I want to make is that the reason why they are bringing in this bill is because they find that extradition is now becoming very difficult. You know, people like Vijay Mallya saying that in India, you know, they will be mistreated, or they will not be given treated humanly.
Yes.
And all kinds of allegations are being made.
Yes.
So I think the government is now more keen on getting the money rather than getting the person back to India.
That's an important point that you make, that the government is more keen on getting back the money and perhaps understands the constraints when it comes to extradition. Maybe it's a reality check as well. Abhiza Divanji and Mr. Ranina, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us to explain what this proposed Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill will mean. For now, thanks very much for joining us. On to the other big story tonight. Over 82% of non-banking financial corporations registered with the Reserve Bank have been categorized as high-risk financial institutions by North Block. That's the Finance Ministry. 82%. The Financial Intelligence Unit today released a list of nearly 9,500 such companies, which, according to the Finance Ministry, have been categorized as high risk and found to have not complied with the prevention of money laundering rules. Now, government sources say another list is in the works with the names of even more companies that the government believes is not compliant with these laws. Surabhi Upadhyay joins us now with more. Surabhi, I mean, it's a 9,500 list of NBFCs that the Finance Ministry says are high risk. Can you highlight for us some of the NBFCs which have been listed as high risk? And, you know, we've tried to reach out to a lot of these companies involved. What's the response?
FIU's list of 9,500 odd entities really does throw up some interesting names. I'll start with some of the listed companies first. And, you know, you have names like McDowell Holdings crop up here, something like TCI Finance, SE Investments, which is now known as Paisa Lo. And then there are, of course, smaller entities there as well. You know, companies listed on the BSE like Capital India Finance, Interglobe Finance. These are really small companies with market cap of just 15 to 20 crore odd rupees. You know, the harder issue was to try and ascertain whether any of the entities present on this list were related or linked to listed companies or listed groups. So we started digging around a little bit. For instance, Reliance Commercial Finance. So when we reached out to Reliance Capital to find out if there's a link here, Reliance Capital told us that Reliance Commercial Finance was merged into Reliance Capital back in 2011. Again, one entity known as DLF Finvest. So when we reached out to DLF, DLF did confirm that this is a subsidiary. However, DLF calls this a dormant subsidiary of the company, which does not take any loans from the public or from banks. It's not lending to any third party. That was DLF's clarification. Similarly, there's an entity called Wellspun Finance. So when we asked the Wellspun Group about this, they did acknowledge that yes, that this is a subsidiary. However, also went on to say that Wellspun Finance has already submitted or surrendered its certification to the RBI, and it's no longer undertaking any sort of NBFC activity, and it's also not linked to any of the listed Wellspun Group entities. Now, these were some of the companies that came back to us. There are lots of names that are still out there where we are still awaiting responses. For example, an entity like Minda Finance. We are yet to hear from the Minda Group as to whether there is a link. A company known as Radico Khaitan Finance. Again, we're waiting for the Radico Khaitan Group to get back to us. Magna Consumer, GMR Enterprises, Centrum Financial Services, ASK Financial Holdings. So there are lots of names out there. What's interesting is that the FIU obviously has only put out a list. It's a red flag of sorts. we don't know what sort of regulatory action this would be followed up by, because the terrain is really ultimately the RBI's. So are these companies going to be barred from, further perhaps, giving out loans? Will there be certain penal provisions? Will there be any penalties, any restrictions imposed on them? That is something that's not clear from the FRU's press release or the FRU's notification. We'll have to see how the sector regulator responds to this.
India's export growth has been largely stagnant over the last 8 years. Here are some hard facts. 6 years ago, we exported goods and services worth nearly $250 billion, and that's largely been the range since 2012. Last year, India's exports amounted to $243 billion. On a monthly basis, the numbers are volatile. For January, exports dropped to $24 billion. In September last year, it was just under $29 billion. In a bid to shore up exports and lift domestic manufacturing, the government hiked customs duty on a slew of products in the budget. The centre has defended the move, saying it's not protectionist and that the government is well within the conventions of the World Trade Organization. So is a customs duty hike the best way to make in India? Joining me now to discuss this is the former Deputy Chairman of the erstwhile Planning Commission, Montek Singh Ahluwalia. So I appreciate you joining us here on CNBC-TV18. You believe that this is in fact a reversal of policies followed over the last 26 years by successive Indian governments, and this is a move towards protectionism. It is contrary to the promise that the Prime Minister made in Davos about an open India and about an open economy. The government's argument is that this is being done to make in India. Do you believe that this is the wrong way to make in India?
Well, I've made that plain in my article, and I've consistently held the view that, protection is not the right thing to do in order to make in India. I mean, it's very important to do some making in India, and there are many things that we need to do to promote a Make in India campaign. The wrong thing to do is to raise customs duties. Now, it's quite irrelevant to say that this doesn't contradict our WTO obligations. Because the truth is, our WTO obligations, we had set them years and years ago at a very high level. And the idea was that as part of the Doha round, which seems to have collapsed, these would get lowered. So the fact that the existing bound tariff rates allow us to raise tariffs is not a justification for raising them. I mean, in these 26 years that we've been lowering tariffs, different governments of different political parties, we've been consistently lowering them below what the WTO rates allowed. So that's not a relevant consideration.
Right. But, since you talked about why you believe that the exchange rate has now become unfavorable, and the response, whether it's from the Reserve Bank or the government, is that market forces will determine where the exchange rate is headed. In that scenario, then, what is your ask? What is the expectation from both the Reserve Bank as well as the government when it comes to the exchange rate? Because that's the response that, that one gets.
I mentioned that. By the way, I'm guilty of inventing some of these formulas earlier. So I'm not saying they're doing. This is what we've said in the last 15 years. But in the early stages, when we were liberalizing, the real concern was that the exchange rate might depreciate too much, and then people were very scared that, look, we can't have too much of a depreciation. So we invented this, look, you can't rule out a depreciation, but we'll intervene to stabilize. Which capital account is much more open. It's not fully open, but it's much more open. And so money can be flooding in because of what's happening elsewhere in the world. Now, if that money floods in and raises the exchange rate, do you mind? You want to leave it to the rest of industry by saying this is a market-determined exchange rate? It's not a totally market-determined exchange rate because, you don't allow capital outflows, you encourage capital inflows. Now, when we argue, let's say, when we criticize the IMF, that these fellows want an open capital account with complete flexibility, which is unreasonable because it can push the exchange rate to unreasonable levels, that's like saying, well, we want to retain some control over the exchange rate. All I'm saying is, let's clarify what it is. That formula is a singularly uninformative formula.
Montek Singh Ahluwalia, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC-TV18. That's the former Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission with his thoughts on why hiking customs duty is the wrong way to make in India. Time now for a break, but when we return, a special discussion with Somnath Bharti of the Aam Aadmi Party on the Delhi government's plan to live stream all its official meetings. Is this strategic symbolism or a big push for transparency? We put that question to him when we return. Well, the Delhi government under Kejriwal is considering live streaming of all its official meetings in a bid to increase transparency and possibly steer clear of future controversies. The Delhi government has been accused of assaulting the chief secretary. So is this just strategic symbolism or a big push for transparency? Joining us now to answer those questions is the former Law Minister of Delhi and an Aam Aadmi Party MLA, Somnath Bharti. Mr. Bharti, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC-TV18. Let me start by asking you, sir, about the timing of this decision before I get into the modalities of the decision, about the timing of the decision. Some would argue that this is symbolism, given that you are being accused of, the party is being accused of physically assaulting a serving bureaucrat.
See, what's the way out? In fact, whatever we do, we are bound to be questioned. And we are not worried about that. What could be better than this? That the government itself, the government in power, has decided to web telecast all of its meetings. In Hindi, it's called Haath Kangan Ko Aarsi Kya. So the moment we are telecasting each and every meeting, each and every deliberation of the government, then everybody could see that who is becoming a the hindrance in the developments of Delhi.
So
in fact, world over also,
so if I can pick up on what you just said, Mr. Bharti,
telecast.
I'm sorry. Sure, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but you know, from what you just said, this move seems to be a response to the recent events that have taken place. So the altercation with the Chief Secretary, which is a matter that's currently under probe, I don't want to get into that, but this seems to be your government's response to that, isn't it?
So let me first clarify on that. In fact, in Delhi, two incidents have taken place. One is the alleged one, which is by Anshu Prakash. And he had alleged that we have, two of our MLAs had beaten him up. There is no video evidence, there is no audio evidence, there is no documentary evidence, there is no evidence. On the other hand, there is a video evidence where one of our minister and one of our senior government functionary, Ashish Khaitan, they were surrounded, they were threatened with life, they were abused left, right and center. On those videos, there is no action by Delhi police whatsoever. Forget about arresting somebody.
Okay.
So I don't understand. The same CRPC, the same CPC, the same Constitution of India govern both the things. Or do we have BJP governed Delhi police have got different set of rules for Aam Aadmi Party complaints?
Mr. Bharti, as I pointed out,
that's one. Number two,
the purpose of this debate is not to go into the merits of what happened with the Chief Secretary. The purpose is to understand the timing of this decision. Now, if we can talk about the modalities, when do we start to see your meetings? When do we start to see the Delhi government live stream its meetings? Will you live stream all your meetings? Will cabinet meetings be live streamed? Give me a sense of what we should expect.
So, Honorable Chief Minister has been categorical in this. The government has categorically stated now that each and every meeting of the cabinet or of any meeting where bureaucrats are involved, all those meetings are going to be telecasted. World over also, there is a practice. In fact, Supreme Courts get telecasted, parliaments get telecasted, different councils get telecasted. In US, there are different cabinet meetings get telecasted. So it's a very, very good gesture. The government, which is full of convictions that we are doing good for for Delhi state, for the people of Delhi, and that is why we have the audacity to telecast each and every meeting. No government in India, central government or state governments can have this sort of transparency desire. So we are going loud and clear.
I agree
that we want to show everybody in India that what exactly happened in the meetings, who is obstructing. Why did CCTV camera installation get delayed? Everything would become loud and clear to the people of Delhi, and I'm glad that our government is doing it.
Mr. Bharti, let me also ask you, and these are matters of technicality, so I want to get them out of the way. Has this been legally vetted? Have you sought legal opinion before making this announcement? Does this also require, and I know that that's a sensitive, sore topic with the Aam Aadmi Party, but does this also in any way require a go-ahead or nod from the LG?
Shireen, nothing in our government, nothing during our 3 years tenure has been obstructed. Nothing has happened of this kind. Everything, whatever decision we took, whether it was installation of CCTV securing the interest of Delhi, or it be the making of mohalla clinics, everything was obstructed by BJP proxy people. Now, this decision of ours to bring in extreme transparency in the governance, I mean, possibly will have to be routed through the LG office and other cabinet decisions. But we have made our intention clear. So through your channel, I want to request my friends in BJP that please support this decision of ours. Allow us to be transparent to the extreme, so that people in Delhi, people across India, should be able to see that what exactly this 4 years old party is doing in governance of Delhi.
Well, you might be reaching out to the BJP via this interview, sir, but let me then ask you, because if I heard you correctly, or if I can read between the lines of what you just said, this is merely intent on your part. You do not have the go-ahead for this, so you will require the permission of the LG before you can start to live stream your meetings.
See, unfortunately, Shireen, in Delhi, that's what situation is. Whatever Honorable Chief Minister desires, whatever this government desires...
So have you had a conversation? Have you had a conversation with the LG?
Has to be... See, what I'm saying that everything is being now framed out.
Have you sought his approval?
Intention has been clear. What I'm saying that everything will have to be moved officially, and surely enough, very soon things will be officialized and channelized through the proper channel, as BJP people have been wanting us to do. We have always been doing that. But never ever things have happened in our favor, in the favor of people of Delhi. But I think
Mr. Bharti, simple question, sir. Simple question. When will you officially?
To the people's scrutiny. So I think.
When will you officially? I'm running out of time. I'm running out of time. When will you officially seek the LG's nod?
See, I'm not part of the government that way. So I think very soon the intention has been made clear. The cabinet will possibly be sitting very soon to have it officialized. I think maybe within next week things should come on the table.
All right. Well, Somnath Bharti, thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. That's the Aam Aadmi Party saying it intends to live stream all of its meetings, but they will require the nod of the LG, and that process of formalizing this intent into a decision is likely to happen over the next few days. That's the word in from the Aam Aadmi Party. It's time for a break, but the big exclusive when we return.
Does that mean that the market overall is overvalued based on what you think is fair?
No, not necessarily.
What is investment guru Warren Buffett make of Wall Street's rally? Does he believe stocks are overvalued? We ask him when we return.